When my mom said, if we try everything and you still feel this way, I will let you enter life, I was like, oh my God, I finally have this out. I will get through this finite list of things that will not work because nothing is going to work. And then I will finally be able to end my life. And not only will I be able to end my life, but I'll be able to end my life without having to feel guilty about what I'm doing to my family.
Welcome to Whole by Design, the podcast exploring the human experience with compassion and curiosity. Together, we'll uncover powerful internal resources and tools to help you embrace clarity, joy, and your full potential because you are whole by design. Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Julie Lopez, and I'm your host for Whole by Design. On this week's episode, we will be diving into the complicated world of suicide and suicidality. And I am so pleased to be welcoming in Faith and Brenda. They are a mother-daughter team, and Faith Ferber is actually one of our extremely talented clinicians here at the Viva Center. She does a lot of incredible work, especially with non-talk-based therapy and lots of innovative modalities to help people really get results and really get relief from a whole host of different mental health struggles. Her mother, Brenda, is a big part of the story today. She is a professional writer, and she is specifically doing a lot of writing of nonfiction on mental health and parenting, and she's working on a memoir about raising Faith, which we're going to hear more about on the podcast today. I want to encourage you to stay until the end when we're going to hear very specifically from Faith herself about the one thing that helped her really change her relationship to her own struggle around being suicidal. So before we jump in, I just want to remind you to check out our website, www.vivapartnership.com, for free and low-cost resources that can change your life. Thank you guys so much for joining me today on the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
So happy to be here.
It's awesome to have you. So tell me a little bit about the journey. I know it was a different chapter than where we are now, but it was really a huge, huge struggle, and one that I know you both feel passionate about shining a light on for other people.
Yeah, I can kind of start, and Mom, if you want to jump in, go for it. But I am someone who really struggled with my mental health my whole childhood for as long as I can remember. am very into watching home videos from the 90s, and there is a video of me at 7 saying that I can't wait to be a teenager because I'll be able to die. It was something that was just kind of always, I feel like, wired in me from a very, very young age. I feel like I have attachment related trauma, not with my parents, but I have a twin brother. And in kindergarten, we were split up for the first time. And in preschool, we were together on everything. And everyone was kind of worried about how he was going to do when we were split up. And I was like not okay without him. And he was perfectly fine and ran off and made friends. And that just, for me, I just felt abandoned and not good enough, and just kind of brokenhearted, I think. And that really just kind of started the depression and anxiety that really started to escalate. And I don't know, Mom, if you want to talk about when I was 9 and getting into therapy.
Yes. So, first of all, it's important to note that Faith was an incredibly bright, precocious, charming, friendly, outspoken, passionate girl so when she did show signs of mental illness, my husband and I just were like, oh, she's so smart. She could logic her way through this. She can grow out of this. She's all good, because she had friends and she was busy, and like she didn't have signs where you would think, oh, this is really a problem. It's like she wouldn't go to school, she wouldn't make friends, she wouldn't talk to people. No, that was not the story. So it was very confusing as parents. But what
So
Faith,
can I just say, so like on
Yeah,
the outside and even logically, you were like, check, check, check. She is fine. She's
absolutely.
talented. She's beautiful. She's friendly. She's, all the things, right?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And we also saw that she was like incredibly sensitive and incredibly like moody and so we were concerned about that, but we thought, oh, that's just part of her personality. It's okay. But when she was 9 years old, she got into trouble at school. She and some friends in the classroom played a mean trick on the new girl in their class. And the teacher called me and told me what happened at school. And so when Faith got home, I told her, she was grounded from her phone and whatever. She didn't have a phone then. I guess the computer, and she had to like stay in her room or whatever it was, just a little consequence for her behavior. And I didn't think it was such a big deal. But then that night, my husband and I were sitting watching TV after the kids had all gone to bed. And Faith came downstairs after bedtime and she grabbed a knife from the kitchen counter and she stood in front of my husband and me and is playing with the knife against her palm and said, "I'm a terrible person." And it's like my heart stopped. I was like, what is happening here? And I said, "You're not a terrible person. You did something that wasn't kind, but that doesn't mean you're a terrible person." And she, just felt so, so, so bad about herself that I finally, she wouldn't give us the knife at first. We're like, "Please give us the knife." She's like, "I like the way it feels." We're like freaking out a little bit. And then I said, "Do you want to maybe see a therapist?" And she nodded, and you could see the tension just like come out of her body. And she's handed us the knife, fell into our arms, and said, "What took you so long?" Which was like another knife right into my chest. What took me so long? So I felt really, really bad about that it took me till she was 9 years old to realize how serious her mental health struggles were. Um, Even though she was trying to tell me in drawings and pictures and notes and verbalizations how bad she really did feel, for years before that moment. And I just didn't really believe it.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a part of you that didn't want to believe it.
100%. I didn't
Yeah.
want to believe it. My husband didn't want to believe it. She just seemed on the outside so great. And so we just thought, oh, it's just Faith being dramatic. Faith
Right.
being
Like I had friends and I played sports and I
right.
did music, and the picture of like what it meant to be mentally ill, especially then, was like you're isolated and you don't have friends and you don't do anything and you don't and I eventually got to that point where I withdrew from all my activities and all of that. But for a long time I was getting A's in school, doing great, having tons of friends, being in the popular group, succeeding in all of the external ways, and just feeling like at my core, I was a fundamentally bad person who didn't deserve to be loved, didn't deserve anything good, and who should just be dead.
And I think also there's like there's this wrong expectation that many, many parents have, and I think I had this as well, which is good parents equal good kids and bad parents equal bad kids. So like here we were, a mom and a dad happily married, a stable home environment, good parenting techniques, like, you know, we couldn't have a mentally ill child. That made no sense to me. Um,
Right.
and so, but that's the mental illness stigma, and it's not true. And putting that kind of pressure on parents not only makes parenting harder, but it prevents kids who really, really need extra help from getting it.
So let me ask you, Faith, about your part of this equation. When your mom, Brenda, was just talking about how you were like, oh, like finally, finally, like what was that like for you on your side of this relationship?
I can't remember if I actually remember that night specifically, but I do remember in in 7 and 8-year-old ways trying to express that I wanted to die. Like I would draw a picture of me locked in a tower being eaten by tigers and saying like I deserve to be eaten by tigers. I had like a weird hangman drawing hanging up on my wall where like every day that I had a bad day, I would hang another part of myself. And it was like I didn't have the language to say I'm thinking of suicide. I was only 7 and 8, but I was saying like I'm in so much distress. And so once I got into therapy, I think that that did feel really relieving to me because I was like, I know something is very wrong with me. So at least now we're talking about it. Like, I don't even know how I really knew what therapy was at that age, but I knew I was supposed to be talking to someone.
Well, and isn't that a human driver, right? Like if you look at ideal human relationships, there's validation, there's mirroring, there's empathy. And so if you're having a collection of experiences internally and you're deeply connected to it, but externally people are seeing something different, and there's a part of you that is not validated, not normalized, not mirrored, not attuned to, that's a very isolating kind of experience. So I just felt like it was a really powerful moment that Brenda described as of others saying, oh, finally, like, oh my gosh, finally, like I'm getting some recognition. And I know there's so many stories, we see them unfortunately all the time, where someone just like your mom described, someone adult or otherwise, who is popular and smart and has so much going for them. And everyone's like, I had no idea, right? That it's so isolated or it's so separate from the way they're being experienced relationally on the outside. And I think there's a really big miss there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I hear a lot now people say I had no idea you were struggling so much as a kid and I'm like I've been shocked by it. I'm like seriously? Like I thought it was so obvious to everyone and it really was not.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know there was a big article, right,
Mhm.
that came out in HuffPost, and it had some really key points to it. And I wonder if either one of you would like to share what you, I know what I think, kind of reading it, that was like, it's just such, so expansive to me in my heart, which really speaks to the power of your relationship and how when I'm really, really impressed with a relationship that I see, whether it's friends or partners or parent child, it's when it can be really, really stretched beyond any limit that you think it could be and still stay connected. So I wonder if you, if, and I guess since Brenda started, maybe Faith, you can tell me a little bit about your experience of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I started therapy at 9, and then from that point on, it was weekly therapy. Weekly therapy escalated to like therapy and meds when I was in middle school. I went to wilderness therapy. I was hospitalized in 8th grade. I kind of did all of the traditional Western medicine treatments that there were for mental health conditions at that time and just continue to struggle. Therapy was definitely beneficial, but I was still depressed and still anxious and still suicidal and still feeling like I was a bad person. And in middle school, it escalated to self-harm and, using boys as a way to get like that instant validation and way to feel immediately better in the moment. And so I continue to struggle and before what isn't shared in the article is that things got so bad to the point that I was going to a boarding school. I got kicked out of my boarding school for being suicidal. And I had to go back home to my public school with all of these kids who hadn't seen me since I had mysteriously disappeared in middle school to go to wilderness therapy. All of a sudden, I was back. I had no friends because I had gotten kicked out in the middle of the semester. I got D's for the whole semester. It was my junior year of high school. I was like, I've ruined my chance at college. Like, I was like, I've really messed up my life. I had no friends when I moved back here. I was literally eating lunch in the school bathroom. Like, it was really bad. And I was like, wow, like, I just truly have messed up my life more than I possibly could have imagined. And so I was very set on ending my life. And one day I left the house with the intentions of killing myself. And I wrote a note and I attempted, and the attempt didn't work. And I was like, I'm such a failure at life that I can't even kill myself correctly. Like, all I want to do is get out of this pain. Like, I want to be done, and I can't even do that. So I came home feeling deeply hopeless and deeply exhausted and deeply just stuck in a place that I didn't want to be. And that was when I kind of got home and I sat down next to my mom on the couch and I said, "You'll be okay when I die." And she was like, "No." I will not be. And I was like, no, you will. And in my mind, when I was saying that, I was thinking, like, as I said, parents of kids with cancer get over it. And in my mind, that meant like, you'll smile again, you'll laugh again, like, there will be good moments and you'll love them and enjoy them. That was kind of my perspective, which obviously, I'm not a parent, so don't really have that. But she was like, I will never get over it. And Mom, I don't know if you want to share some of that.
So yeah, when Faith compared her depression to cancer, for me, it was like the moment that clicked. And it was like, oh, you know, this may not be cancer, but it's killing her the same as a malignant tumor.
Right.
And and I thought, well, if she did have cancer, we would try every single thing to cure her, not just Western medicine, everything, like any sort of strange cure we would try. We would do it all. We would throw everything at it. And Faith was like, well, if you did all of that and I still was sick, you would let me die. And I was like, that's true because we just don't have that control. We don't have that control. And so I said, okay, if we try everything to cure you now and you still feel this bad, I will let you die. And that's what happened. And it was like those words are crazy words to come out of a mother's mouth because of course I didn't want my daughter to die. And and in my mind, this list of like, let's try everything, in my mind, might have been never ending. On the one hand, it was a never ending list and something would work for Faith. And then the other hand was this letting go and understanding Faith's pain is so bad. And this is not a way to live. And it was like, instead of, instead of like fighting her, like I felt like our whole lives, she wanted to die and I wanted to keep her alive. And it was like we were opposing teams on a football field. And suddenly it like switched and I came over to her side and I was on her team. And the other side of the field was depression. And so me and her against this horrible depression, instead of me being like, no, it'll get better. It's not that bad. Life is good. Look how good you have it. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Not helpful.
Yeah.
Being on her team against depression, incredibly helpful. And Faith had a totally different take on that conversation, though. And
I
Faith,
did. Yeah. Yeah. That was a huge turning point for me because I heard a lot growing up, especially from my parents. It will get better. Like, just hang in there. It'll get better. Like, especially, you're a teenager.
Reassurance, kind of,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
minimizing, but
Yes. Yes, which makes other people feel better because God forbid they admit that a loved one might struggle forever. It's a really hard thing for people to accept. But for me, I was like, there's no evidence that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I can't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And even if there is maybe a light at the end of the tunnel, I don't know that I have the energy to get there. Depression weighs you down. It makes everything exhausting. It makes everything a million times harder. I didn't know if I had the fight in me. In fact, I was convinced I did not have the fight in me. Um, and so when my mom said, if we try everything and you still feel this way, I will let you enter life, I was like, oh my God, I finally have this out. I will get through this finite list of things that will not work because nothing is going to work. And then I will finally be able to end my life. And not only will I be able to end my life, but I'll be able to end my life without having to feel guilty about what I'm doing to my family.
With
That,
peace, with
yeah,
permission, with an
yes,
ally, with
yes.
someone that sees you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I was like, my pain is being seen. The depth of my pain is being seen. The potential permanence of my pain is being seen.
So
And
all of that stuff, the
yeah.
normalizing, the validating. Yet I imagine that was probably the hardest thing to do as a parent.
Nothing harder, nothing harder. And, I've talked to so many parents since this moment about this, and it's a terrifying thing to even think about for a parent, let alone say. And, I mean, I want to be very clear. I'm not telling any parents to tell their child to end their life. I always need to make that very clear. What
Right.
I am saying is that you need to validate their pain. You need to be on their side. You need to understand this isn't logical. It's not your fault. This is something your child is dealing with, and they need you on their team. They need you to understand.
Well, and it's making me think about something really powerful that we talk about and we work with all the time at the Viva Center, where Faith and I both work. And that is that there is a huge difference between knowing something intellectually with this part of your brain and feeling something in a visceral way or in a sensory way in the cells of your body. And
Mhm.
so another way I hear what you're saying is the task for a parent is to put themselves to the side and step out of their intellectual wish or rationalizations or logistical drive to try to change someone's mind and just like exhale and sit next to them and listen, right? In a true way to what's happening. And that there's really a lot of power in that.
So
Yeah.
much. That's exactly right, Julie. Yes.
Yeah. So, Faith, you said that made a huge difference for you. I want to hear really from both of you about what you would say to other people that are struggling with depression or that are struggling with feelings of wanting to end their life, whether it's a loved one or the person themselves, specifically because you've gone through this journey. And I think there are, just like we talk about in this podcast all the time, like the human system is incredibly complex and there are all these amazing, resilient opportunities for change within the system. I'd love to hear kind of what messaging you have for any part of a relationship with suicide.
Yeah, I think something that I repeat over and over again with my clients is that it's really helpful to think of suicide as a very helpful protector because it's a part of you that is saying, if the pain is too bad, we will find a way out.
Mhm.
And I think we can actually really honor that when there's so much fear around suicide, understandably, that it's all about shutting that part down, like just make that part be really, really quiet. And if we recognize that it makes sense for somebody in deep pain to be thinking about any way to get out of that pain, I think we can have a lot more compassion for people who are feeling suicidal.
Yes, that's amazing. And it sounds like if we're leveraging off of your story that you actually felt a lot of relief in having the validation and the space for what was actually going on in your system instead of it constantly being negated or kind of have this attempts to talk you out of. It's kind of like what you resist will persist, right? It's like this energy saying, no, you don't. And you're like, no, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Louder, louder, louder. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah. What about you, Brenda? What's your thoughts for other people that are maybe on your side of the fence, the loved one of someone who, or, loving someone who's struggling with so much pain and wanting to end their life?
Yeah, I think what Faith said is so beautiful and so important for people to understand. And from a mom's point of view, I mean, we're wired to want to protect our children. It's like in our bodies to want to protect our children. So it feels very counterintuitive to let their feelings of suicide be okay with you. It's just so hard, but it actually is such an act of love to give them the space to have those feelings and to know that you're going to be with them and you're not going to talk them out of it. You're not going to say it gets better. You're not going to minimize it or any of that or try to logic it. Just sitting with them, just listening, just holding, just maybe saying, how can I best support you right now? Those are things you can do.
It's amazing. So that means that's a real stretch. And fortunately, we know about neuroplasticity that our bodies can stretch, that we can move them and strengthen them. But it means saying, oh my gosh, I'm so frightened, and this is such a terrible outcome. Right, like you said, it's primal. Like everything in me wants to protect you or not have that come to pass or have this terrible rupture, of this attachment that I have. It means taking that and setting it to the side,
Yes.
which is a lot, right? Setting it to the side in order to be like truly, truly present and validating for your loved one, which is hard and incredible.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I
So
don't know how I did it, to be honest, but like I'm glad I did it. But I think for me, like
inspiring,
I'm a
Brenda.
big journaler, so I was always journaling about my feelings. But for anyone else going through this, like seek out help yourself because this is not an easy thing to do for a parent. Um, I got my help through journaling, but you might need help through a therapist, or you might need help through like a good friend who's gone through this before, or whatever it is. But because it is like the scariest thing in the world to do. Like I do remember before I said this to Faith, I remember walking the dogs maybe the day before, and all of a sudden, like I felt Faith's loss. I felt like she had died. And I was grieving in advance. That's how much I had to let go of this idea of protecting her. I realized I cannot keep her from ending her life if that's what she wants to do. I can't.
Ah, so hard. And I'm a mom.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
have my own attachment issues as an adopted person. So I'm going to be honest. And I love Faith. You have such an amazing daughter. So I've been working to like keep my tears in so the podcast keeps going, but it's so touching and so beautiful. And I agree with all the things. You're so talented and big-hearted and an amazing therapist, but just an amazing person. And so I just think it's incredible and it's super inspiring. And my hope, like every episode with this podcast, is that someone's listening and they're like, ooh, we've tried all these things. I never thought about that crazy idea. Well, that's a crazy idea. I definitely haven't tried yet. And that's my hope. And I could talk to you guys for days, but we're near the end. So I'm gonna pass it over to you, Faith, and just ask about your story. And I do want to point out, just like Brenda said, people are different. You said for you it was journaling, but I love how you shared that. You're like, for someone else, it might be this or this or this. And I do believe that's true, that people are really unique. But tell us for you, Faith, you had your own kind of personal turning point. But what was that? What was that moment and what was that switch? We've all would love to know.
Yeah, so for me, it was working with an energy healer and doing Reiki work, which I don't think we would have even been familiar with, except for the fact that the person that I worked with is one of my mom's very good friends. And so that was kind of where we started, was like, if we're going to go kind of away from conventional medicine, let's start here. And I was really convinced that it wasn't going to work, especially over the phone. I was like, this is probably made up. And we worked with an amazing energy healer. Her name is Cheryl Netsky. And Cheryl was like, you're missing parts of your soul. I can see the depression in like every chakra. I'm gonna go on this journey to retrieve the missing parts of your soul. And I was like, okay, lady, whatever you say. And she's making sounds on the other end of the phone, and I'm like, oh, I'm being scammed. Like, there's no way this is gonna work. But at one point I got distracted, and at the exact time I got distracted, she was like, bring your focus back to your breath. And I was like, how does she know? And then she said she found these parts of my soul, and she was like, I'm going to tell you what I found, and you're going to tell me what they mean. And I said, okay. So as she's saying these things, consciously, I'm like, I have no idea what these mean. In fact, like, you should tell me what they mean. But as I'm consciously thinking that, there are words coming out of my mouth that make perfect sense for what it all means. So she had found a baby fawn, and I said something about how they're on shaky legs, but they keep trying to stand up until they're on firmer ground. She found a pearl, and I was thinking about kind of this rougher exterior, but if you can get inside, there's this beautiful gem. And then a bride in a wedding dress, and every time she looked at herself, she glowed. And for me, that was all about loving yourself so deeply that you glow. And it was my first experience of recognizing that we have so much wisdom and healing in our body right outside of our conscious awareness, which is why I love working at the Viva Center and getting to do this work, which is so full circle. Because, oh my gosh, like, I am a full believer that our bodies truly have every piece of wisdom we need to know to heal. We just have to learn how to tap into it. And that's what Cheryl taught me how to do. And I left that one session feeling so much lighter. And I came out of my room, and my mom said she saw a light in my eyes that she had not seen in years. And the next day, I didn't feel suicidal. And the day after that, I didn't feel suicidal. And I just kept kind of thinking it would end at some point, but it just kept going and going and going. And it really completely changed my entire relationship with suicide.
Thing. I love it. And I love that it was not like, I love the way you tell the story because you're like, okay, this is going to sound crazy. And it was on the phone and it was
Yes.
whatever, but it is what it is. And you're
Yes.
a living testimony of that. And you know what your life has been since then. And how many years ago was that?
Over probably 15 years ago, 14, 15
Amazing,
years
right?
ago. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how many years did you that you were consciously aware of? Do you remember feeling like you wanted to die?
At least 10.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
least 10.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So this is your truth.
Yeah.
And now I know you've worked with a number of people who also have felt suicidal, and I
Yeah.
bet you could share different turning points that were completely different for each one. But I think from where I sit, I think what's important to note is that all people, no matter what's going on, really react so positively to being seen,
Yes.
to being seen in all their parts, whether it's painful or triumphant, right? We as a species flourish on that, and that we're all different, and that there are ways to make change. And I think, especially with suicide, right? I think the power of your story is about, Brenda joining you and making space for you and doing this like impossible, seemingly Herculean thing for a parent to do. And it's just so beautiful, like when it comes to love and sacrifice, but that everyone's different and that suicide is a permanent solution to a state that can change and move. And so I think that's a pretty powerful message also. Any last things you want to say before we wrap up? I definitely want to say it's been a pleasure having you guys on the podcast. And, I hope that this message reaches a lot of people.
I
Yeah.
want to just say thank you, Julie, for having us. And thank you, Faith, for being so brave to share your story. A lot of people are not brave
Yeah.
enough to talk about this. And I'm just so proud of you.
Hmm.
Thank you.
I love you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're just trying to make me cry the whole time. uh, Faith, do you want to say any last thing? No pressure.
Last thing I'll just say is I want people to ask their loved ones if they're thinking about suicide, if they're worried that that could be a thing. There is a huge, huge myth out there that asking someone if they're thinking about suicide will put the idea in their head, and the research shows that that's absolutely not the case. The best thing you can do if you see someone who's struggling is just to ask, are you having any thoughts of hurting yourself or ending your life? And that's that starting place for being with them in their pain.
So beautiful. I love that. Well, for all you listeners, thank you for joining me today on this really powerful episode of Whole by Design. I hope it left you feeling inspired to toss out the labels, embrace new perspectives, and take one step closer to the joy and clarity that you deserve. As always, visit www.vivapartnership.com to access our free and low-cost resources that will empower you and your loved ones on health and healing. Let's spread the message, subscribe, review, or share the episode with someone who could benefit from a stigma-dropping approach to mental fitness today.